Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us in the last of seminar of the 10th International Plant Breeding Seminar Series. We have the pleasure and the honor of having with us Rachel Magaya from Marondera University. Rachel is the chairperson of the Department of Horticulture at Marondera in Zimbabwe. Her focus is on advising horticultural science and enhancing regional maize germplasm. Specifically, I imagine it's white corn germplasm, which is a staple in East and Southern Africa. Rachel is actively supporting and engaging in academic programs designed to develop highly skilled professionals. And currently, she's aiming at getting her PhD in plant breeding at Marondera University, where she previously completed her master's degree. And she also holds a bachelor degree in horticulture from the Women's University in Africa. Rachel, I'm going to stop sharing and give you the floor. Thank you so much again, and go ahead and start sharing and unmute yourself.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to share my screen.
Just put in presentation mode. Oh,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
You're good to go.
All right. Oh, something is happening now.
You having any problems?
Yes, I can't see my screen now.
Well, you want me to share your presentation from my side, and then you tell me to move the slides?
Let me try this side. Hmm.
Let me share the. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Try again. Try. You want me to share? Okay.
Okay, let me try. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Rachel Magaya. I am a DPhil student from Marondera University of Agricultural Sciences and Technology, known as MUAST in Zimbabwe. So today I'm going to talk about the maize breeding in Zimbabwe. Here we call it maize. It's popularly known as maize, not corn. So I'm going to take you through my presentation. So I will start with the background of this presentation. So let me take you back to the production of maize worldwide and also in Zimbabwe. Maize is the third most cultivated or produced cereal worldwide after wheat and rice, and it is described as a versatile crop grown in most countries, 169 countries across the globe, due to its vast adaptation in diverse environments. So here in Zimbabwe, maize production traces back to the 16th century, and it was systematized during the colonial era, and now it is predominantly produced by smallholder farmers, mainly by smallholder farmers who produce almost 60 to 70% of the most maize production in Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe, from that map, it is showing that most of the maize production is done in Mashonaland provinces, mainly Mashonaland West, Central, and Marsh East, and they constitute about 69% of the maize production in Zimbabwe. Due to the favorable climatic conditions, most of these provinces, they are in natural region 2, and they receive about 800 to 1,000 milliliters of rainfall per year. And as you can see, maize production in Zimbabwe is less, mainly in the southern region, where there are low rainfall, making it less suitable for maize cultivation. So I'll take you through the production and yield trends from 2025 to 2010 to 2025. Maize is the dominant staple crop, and it is followed by wheat from that table, and sorghum. And from that, it shows that maize is an important cereal in Zimbabwe, and it is referred to as the staple food crop. And this makes it the most critical crop for food and security, according to FAO 2024. It is mainly used for food in consumption, for example, our local food sadza, and in animals, it is used as animal feed, especially the yellow maize. So maize production, as I have alluded before, smallholder farmers are the backbone of Zimbabwe's farming sector, responsible for 60 and 70% of the national production, is seen in that chart. So, still on the production trends, maize production and area harvested show positive growth as from 2020 to 2024. 2025. But however, there are low yields of less than 2 tons per hectare, and these are mainly from the smallholder farmers. So future production gains must come from bridging this gap, this yield gap, through improved agricultural practice like breeding for improved varieties rather than expanding the production area. So what is causing these low yields is that of the climate change effects. Here in Zimbabwe, there are frequent occurrences of drought. For example, the 2023 to 2024 El Nino drought, it affected most parts of Zimbabwe, and there was total crop loss in most parts of Zimbabwe. And also erratic rain patterns. Here we are also experiencing mid-season dry spells, and they've become common. And of late, they have negatively impacted on flowering during pollination. It has impacted on the rate of photosynthesis, nutrition uptake, and ultimately yield loss. And also, in hand with this, there are pests and diseases like fall armyworm. These have affected the maize plant at every growth rate from seed to storage. And all these effects, they are affecting the quality and yield of maize. So breeders have been striving to produce climate resilient maize varieties which can withstand these effects of climate change. So as early research initiatives, Zimbabwe maize breeding began in 2030, and shortly after global hybrid development. And with that, it also established the research stations and breeding facilities to create a robust framework for systematic maize improvement, targeting local conditions. And also, Zimbabwe was the first country to commercialize the first single hybrid, first single cross hybrid known as SR52. So these were the first initiatives for the maize breeding, so that we have improved varieties. But however, with the change in climate conditions, these single hybrids, they were mainly focusing on yield. But here comes the climate change. So the national breeding program moved to the development of resilient to drought, heat, and poor soils, so for its farmers, so that they get better yields from the current varieties. So also they bred varieties which were resistant to pests and diseases. And these varieties are resilient to the climatic change effects. So we carried out a review of the maize breeding program objectives in Zimbabwe so that we evaluate to see how the new maize hybrids that are being developed, we evaluated for milling quality and nutritional status under smallholder farming systems. So our objectives were to synthesize the existing knowledge of breeding programs on maize, on white maize hybrids in Zimbabwe, specifically to trace the history of white maize breeding objectives in Zimbabwe, with focus on the shift from agronomic to grain quality. And our second objective was to assess the state of biofat fortification programs for quality protein maize, vitamin A and zinc, and also see how they are being adopted and what are the successes. And the third objective was to synthesize the evidence for the social, economic, and cultural motivations behind milling quality, preferences, and their impact on the variety adoption among smallholder farmers. So our research questions were to see how have the maize breeding objectives in Zimbabwe evolved from the yield-centric up to the grain quality, and to what extent have the biofortified maize varieties been adopted, and what are the major barriers to their success? And also, how can participatory variety selection serve as a platform for the integrated assessment for agronomic and grain quality? So we used methodology for this review, a systematic literature review, whereby we started with 1,500 publications, and we screened for the first screening, we screened 700 publications by reading the abstracts, and the second screening, we read the whole document, and we ended up with 50 publications. So the data sources were the academic databases, Google Scholar, Scopus, and Web of Science. So the criteria for screening, we were screening for the abstract, we were screening for the language, we were also screening for the region, which is the sub-Saharan, including Zimbabwe. We're screening for white maize. And the key findings, we found out that distribution of maize breeding objectives were agronomic performance, nutrition quality, pests and diseases, milling and processing quality, social and economic adoption. So most authors, they were focusing on agronomic performance, which is mainly on drought resistant, heat tolerance, and also there were about 35% of the authors, they were talking on the those agronomic performances, and about 31% of the authors, they were talking about nutrition quality in terms of the biofortification, pro vitamin A and zinc. They were also talking about the quality protein maize, its advantages over the white maize. Then they were talking about we also have the pest and diseases, mainly on the fall armyworm, its effects, and how to the strategies on how to impact the effects of fall armyworm, and socio-economic adoption and milling quality. So as you can see from the pie chart, a greater number were talking about agronomic and nutrition, but only 9% were talking about milling and processing quality, and a lesser number on social and economic adoption. So it means that more needs to be done on assessing those areas. And on nutrition, nutritional analysis of new maize hybrids. As you can see from the graph, only 10% were talking about general nutrition. When I say general nutrition, it's about the baseline nutrition of white maize. But 41%, they were focusing on quality protein maize, and 34%, they were focusing on pro-vitamin A. 14%, they were focusing on zinc, but 10% were only focusing on the baseline of new maize hybrids. So it means we need to do some research on the baseline of new or pre-release maize hybrids, so that we get an answer on how to biofortify the new maize hybrids, so that we deal with the effects of hidden hunger. So what are the barriers of the biofortified maize varieties? From the study, I found out that cultural preferences for white maize was the major barrier for the adoption of the biofortified maize varieties. Here in Zimbabwe, people, they prefer the white maize because they give white sadza. The yellow varieties, like for example the pro-vitamin A, it's orange or yellow in color. So most people, they associate it with poverty, because in the drought or in the hunger periods, people were being fed with orange maize. Some, they were calling it Kenya. So it's the adoption now of the pro-vitamin A is getting less, because people, they prefer it as a something to do with poverty. And also it is associated with animal feed. Most varieties of of the yellow maize, they are used for animal feed. And also on early stage development of zinc is also affecting its adoption, because the research is still on the early stages. So the adoption of those varieties, they are still low. So from the study, we found out that there's a research gap, in that there's limited attention of grain quality attributes crucial for consumer acceptance, especially in the white maize under smallholder farmers. For consumer acceptance, I can talk of milling quality or milling efficiency, and or nutritional value of the white maize variety. And the national breeding program has traditionally been focusing on grain yield and the drought tolerance and disease tolerance, which means there is a gap which needs to be addressed in terms of consumer acceptance and nutritional value. So as a conclusion, resilience does not mean the ability of a variety to overcome climate shock in the field. Yes, the variety can overcome the climate shock, but its adoption now, it depends on the end user product, which is our SADS. So we need to have a breeding program that includes the yield, the agronomic stability, the milling efficiency, and also the sensory quality. When I talk of sensory quality, those are sensory evaluation whereby we give the different varieties to the farmers to test so that they identify the right variety to be recommended. And we also, as the breeding program, we need to have a nutritional profile for the new white maize hybrid so that we have a baseline. And also, we need to address the critical gap that lies in the disconnect between research stations, evaluations, and the real world needs for the farm or for the smallholder farmers. You find out that when we do our research at the research stations, we find some varieties, they can yield about 13 tons per hectare, for example, the SC727. But when it comes to the farmer, they are getting less than 2 tons per hectare. So we need to evaluate all these characters from agronomic to the nutritional profile under the smallholder farming systems. So as a recommendation, the current state of maize breeding maize breeding for nutritional quality needs to be holistic so that we produce varieties that can be adopted by farmers. But while we are championing for the adoption of biofortified maize varieties, the breeding program must mandatory, make it a mandatory to screen for nutrition, to get a baseline for the new white maize varieties. So this dual approach ensures that preservation and potential enhancement of the nutritional quality for the nation's primary staple crop while respecting consumer preference, and development of climate smart technologies which are tandem to consumer preference that are not only agronomically robust but also culturally acceptable, economically viable, and nutritional sound. So after reviewing this study, we are having some research under smallholder farmers as part of my DFU. We are working with farmers from production and also working with the industry to see how these maize varieties perform in terms of milling efficiency and in terms of nutrition quality. So I've been working with my university, that is Marondera University, and a local private company, Africa Genetics, together with the Agricultural Research Council, the Department of Agricultural Services, and also a local miller, agri-milling stock feeds to collect my data. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Um, I look forward to questions in the chat. Please post your questions. Um, I do have a question. I have a little bit of experience with white corn in East and Southern Africa through some work I did in Zambia. And one of the things we noticed, I was working for a seed company then, is that some of the yellow germplasms, yellow hybrids that we have developed for southern Brazil were doing very well in Zambia. The question is it easy to convert that yellow germplasm into white germplasm, or the milling attributes are so that you end up with some white material that is not fit for consumers.
Okay. If you are to compare the white maize under milling, is that so?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the matter of the color, or there's more to white corn in southern eastern Africa. Because if it was just a matter of the color, you can convert some of those high productive yellow hybrids to the white counterparts and release them. But I have the impression that it's not that easy, that the milling attributes of the white corn in southern and East Africa, it's there are attributes that have been selected for so long that it's not just a matter of the color. There's more to it, isn't it?
Yeah, there's more to it. For example, the white maize varieties, some they say they taste better in
Mm,
terms of taste preferences as compared to the yellow maize varieties. And also, I've read an article which was saying the provitamin A, which is the yellow orange, um, the maize varieties, like the texture, it's like they are sticky. It's,
mm.
like the
Yeah,
texture is sticky, so people they prefer the white maize varieties.
no, I see. Hmm.
It's not only the color, it's
Yeah,
also the texture. And on my research, I think I'm also going to look on the texture in terms of the
mhm.
sensory evaluations.
Okay.
Mhm.
So a question that we receive on the chat is, what are some of the specific mechanisms for drought tolerance that you guys are looking for? Is it deep rooting, stomatal sensitivity, early maturity?
We are mainly looking at early maturity
Mm,
to escape drought. Because
mhm,
some of the varieties that we are evaluating, they are early maturity varieties.
mhm. Okay. So following up on the conversation of quality, I imagine consumers can tell the difference in terms of, as you said, texture and other milling attributes. But how about nutrition? I mean, do consumers are aware of the nutritional value of different hybrids, or it's just something that you, as a researcher, and the government as a caretaker, I would say, are interested in promoting?
Yeah, for the nutrition, I think our consumers, they need to be made aware of.
Okay.
But however, I think the introduction of these biofortified programs, they were mainly focusing on those regions where there is malnutrition, not the whole country. So most of the people, I think they are unaware of what is happening. So they need to be educated about the quality protein maize and its benefits.
I see. So again, please post questions in the chat. Um, so here's and I was working on biofortified cassava, which was yellow cassava, which with a few exceptions is not preferred by consumers. Okay, so you are swimming against the current, I would say. It's good, but people uh, don't prefer it. So you had to do a lot of outreach and trying to convince people. Okay.
Okay.
Um, and my question nowadays, I sort of have a little bit changed my posture. Having all these indigenous vegetables that you have, wouldn't it be best to just, okay, breed corn for what it is? It's a staple, it's a source of energy, and then have these leafy indigenous vegetables fill the nutritional gap. Wouldn't that be um, more efficient? I would say that's an open question. Okay, maybe open to debate.
Okay. For the indigenous vegetable, I think someone is working on that.
Yeah.
yeah. Someone is working on the nutritional status of the amaranth and the
Mhm.
clyomy gland for under food and processing department. So they've
Yeah,
been working on that.
yeah. I mean, it took me a couple of decades of work in Africa to realize that there's a perfect marriage there between these starchy staples like cassava, like corn, yams, and these indigenous vegetables. It's a perfect marriage. One supplies energy, the other one supplies nutrition. Of course, the indigenous vegetables are not fully or readily available all year round, but they're available quite a bit. So yeah, I think the partnership between you and the Institute of Indigenous Vegetables could be a great opportunity there. Any other questions from the audience, please? Uh, please feel free to post questions. Well, I think your presentation was very clear, Rachel.
Okay, thank you.
As I said, I would like to keep in contact with you because of
Okay,
some common interests that we have.
okay.
To the people in the audience, thank you so much for attending this seminar and all the other past seminars. This is the last seminar of the 10th series. We hope to have a new series open on, let me share here. There we are. So the new series should open on March 26, 2026. I would appreciate any of you who have suggestions or wants to volunteer to present. It's always a great thing to have volunteers. So please do. I will reach out to the whole mailing list maybe early next year in search of volunteers or suggestions. Okay. Thank you so much for your attendance. You will have a link to the recordings of all these presentations and in our final message coming up probably tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brandon, for your help in organizing this series. And you guys have a good end of the year since we're not going to speak until next year. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank, thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing me to present.
Okay. All right.
Okay, okay.
Bye, Rachel. Bye, everybody. Thank you.